You ever have a neighbor who treats your yard like it's their personal courtroom? I did, and I swear it turned my life into a suburban soap opera, only wetter. I moved into Maple Ridge thinking I'd escaped drama. Instead, I stepped into the jurisdiction of Karen Parkman's self-appointed HOA sheriff, and everything I planted became a misdemeanor. When we first arrived, Maple Ridge felt like one of those picture-perfect neighborhoods. White fences, lawns cut like a ruler, folks nodding at the mailbox like it was church. Nothing dramatic. That image lasted until Karen decided to audition for control of everything. She wasn't just nosy, she was relentless. Clipboard suspicious, squint lipstick like armor. She carried the HOA like it was a baton, and she had marching orders. At first it was small stuff. My recycling bin sat 6 inches past the curb one week, and within a day a neat typed notice appeared on my door. I planted lavender and got an anonymous note calling the color offensive, as if my flowers had morals they were violating. I laughed it off, promised Maya I'd keep my head down, but gardening is therapy for me. Dirt under my nails, waking up a tiny world in my backyard, and I wasn't going to let someone murder my therapy. Then the watching started. I'd be kneeling by the roses and feel eyes on me, and there she'd be at the edge of her yard, arms crossed, watching like I was burying something illegal. She'd talk sugar-sweet and knife-sharp lovely day Daniel, and then lecture me about fertilizer ratios and how my stepping stones clashed with the neighborhood vibe. She even criticized my bird feeder because squirrels visited it. I almost asked if she'd prefer mountain lions instead. The spying escalated. One night I caught her peering into my kitchen while I was cooking. Another morning she was rifling my trash under the pretense of recycling enforcement. Anonymous slips demanding I remove a gnome that exceeded some imaginary height half an inch over. Who cares that much about gnome politics except someone who loves being the arbiter of taste? You know that slow burn anger you get when someone keeps pushing. That was me. Maya told me to be patient, to take the high road. She said don't give her anything. Easier said than done when the person who polices your house shows up uninvited to your wife's birthday. That was the breaking point. Birthday cake, fairy lights, strung friends gathered. I bring out the cake candles, lit, everybody ready to sing, and the gate bangs open. Surprise, she announces, like she was invited to the party she'd already ruined. She sniffs the buffet, criticizes the decorations, eyeballs our guests like a bouncer running background checks. Conversations stuttered, people made excuses to leave, and I watched Maya's face fold from happy to embarrassed in a breath. She turned to me and said, "Enough. This is invasion, not community." After that night, I stopped being patient. I lay awake, replaying the notes, the peeking, the trash audits, and somewhere in that fog of anger and exhaustion, an idea popped into my head that made me laugh out loud. Water. Not a shout, not a lawsuit, but cold, undeniable water. If she wanted to lurk, let her have a front row seat to something she couldn't ignore. I called Marcus at dawn. Marcus is that guy, garage full of tools, a grin at the prospect of a ridiculous project. When I explained the plan, he said, "Finally, something worth building." We sketched ideas on napkins, ordered parts, and turned my yard into a defensive project. Motion-activated sprinklers, sensors placed where she liked to snoop, precise spray arcs, overlapping coverage. It felt almost wrong to be this gleeful about irrigation, but there's a weird justice in engineering your privacy. We tested until the sprinklers sang the way we wanted them to, gentle arcs for the roses, stronger jets on the perimeter. Neighbors slowed cars, curious. Marcus slipped and got baptized by a prototype head. He laughed and called it a rite of passage. By sundown, my backyard looked like a fortress that smelled faintly of new PVC and victory. The first activation was almost anticlimactic if you didn't count the shriek. I heard it slice through the afternoon and peered through the blinds. Karen stood in the flower bed, white pants plastered to her legs, mascara streaming, hair dripping. She looked less like HOA royalty and more like a soggy cat. The sprinkler hissed and she got drenched, then sputtered off, leaving soggy footprints and furious threats behind. I could have stayed hidden and savored it like a private joke. Instead, I opened the back door, feigned concern, and said, "Oh, Karen, you get wet." Her glare could sunburn. "You did that on purpose," she said. "On purpose," I echoed, innocent as porcelain. "I'm just keeping my lawn green community standards, you know." She stormed off, clients of her own chaos trailing. After that, it turned slapstick. She leaned over the trash can's jet of icy water square in the chest. She crawled across my lawn at night. A rotor head launched a perfect arc. Once she tried a periscope above the hedge only to be toppled by a roof sprinkler, turning the periscope into a soggy toy. The neighborhood started calling it the sprinkler war, and frankly, kids betted on how long it'd take her to get soaked again. But this wasn't all giggles. Her obsession grew dangerous. She taped over sensors. She twisted sprinkler heads. One morning, my water main had been deliberately shut off. I reinforced the system with tamper alarms and backup cams. I documented everything footage of her trespassing, of her trying to sabotage the system, of her rifling through my trash. Evidence that turned a domestic annoyance into a pattern. An HOA meeting was inevitable. Karen turned up with a stack of photos, dramatic blurry shots of herself dripping, and declared my system a menace. She called them weapons of aquatic aggression. The room hummed. I spoke calmly, explained the legality. Everything was on my property. Nothing in our bylaws banned motion-activated irrigation, and if anyone was breaking boundaries, it wasn't me. Then I played the footage, time-stamped clips of late-night trespass, sensor tampering, shovel attacks even, and a retired attorney named George, who lived 3 houses down, stood and said plainly that continued trespass could open one to legal trouble. The room shifted. Karen stormed out, theatrics intact, but the board couldn't issue sanctions without proper cause. It felt like a win, but I knew she'd rebound. People like that don't quit. They adapt. She adapted raincoats and heat umbrellas like shields, camouflage crawls at midnight. She recruited a nephew to sabotage the system who bolted after a single spray. She once stepped onto my lawn with a shovel, determined to dig up the sprinklers. We had sensors, and so when she struck, sprinklers erupted in a dozen jets, turning the scene into a chaotic, muddy symphony. She slipped, spun, and left in a stunned puddle, the cul-de-sac cheering like it was game night. The payoff wasn't just about humiliation. It was the community seeing through her. Folks who used to nod at her pronouncements now chuckled in her absence. Evelyn Hayes, Karen's once loyal sidekick, even suggested maybe my system was working and stopped scolding me. The power had shifted. The enforcer became the spectacle. There was one final meltdown, though. Sunset golden light. Karen charged in with bolt cutters, 2 HOA members trailing behind, face wild, clutching a clipboard and a crowbar. She swung, she lunged, she tried to sever the sprinklers. The heads fired in cinematic arcs. Her papers turned to mush. She toppled backward into a puddle with the sound of someone falling out of a storybook. The neighborhood laughed, not cruelly, not mean, but freed. Months of tension washed away in a sudden ridiculous chorus of water and applause. She resigned from the HOA within weeks, sold her house, and left at dawn with cardboard boxes and a reputation soggy enough to be permanent. Life returned to normal. People planted the colors she'd have banned. We hosted barbecues that lasted past dessert. My sprinklers stayed as much a symbol as a system, a reminder that boundaries matter and privacy is worth defending. So what did I learn beyond the obvious? That water is a formidable negotiator. That small invasions pile up until you either let them change your life or you push back. That revenge can be creative without cruelty. It can be practical, legal, and yes, a little funny. That bullies hate being ridiculous almost as much as they hate losing power. I'll be honest, there were moments I worried we'd gone too far. There were nights watching the footage with a laugh that felt a little guilty. But when someone repeatedly crosses into your house, your peace, your life, you either call the sheriff or you engineer your own boundary. I chose the boundary that soaked the problem away. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to push back like that? Was I petty or was it earned? Where do we draw the line between standing up for ourselves and escalating a feud? Tell me your story, the weird neighbor, the petty war, the moment you decided enough was enough. Share whether you think justice was served or if the sprinkler war was just a messy piece of suburban theater. Because if there's one thing I'll say for certain, it's this: boundaries are sacred, and sometimes the loudest way to protect them is to make sure the person who won't respect them gets soaked by the consequences. What would you have done?